This is TechZine Talks on Tour, the podcast about enterprise technology that brings you IT insights and analyses from events all around the globe. We cover everything, everywhere. Visit techzine.eu for more information, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast.
Welcome to this new episode of TechZine Talks on Tour. I'm at OneConnect, SentinelOne's local event. Joining us today are Adriana Corona and Albert Caballero. Albert, you're the field CISO, and Adriana, you're Director of Products for AI.
That's right.
That's a good start.
Yeah, correct. I love how you say Caballero.
Very
well pronounced, sir.
Yeah, and I attended both your keynotes today, right? What I would like to do in this podcast is to just try and connect the two a little bit, right? So, because you mentioned, the thing that triggered me was that you mentioned during your keynote, Adriana, that one of the main reasons to go for Purple AI is that the biggest frustration for analysts, whether it be junior or very senior, is always the threat hunting part. So I thought that would be an interesting way to connect these two things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we discovered talking with security teams, our own security teams, our customer security teams, that threat hunting and investigation takes hours and is very difficult to do well, even for experts in the field.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree. There's, once upon a time, I ran a SOC and we did threat hunting. But, in too many organizations, the practice of threat hunting is not well integrated into the workflow of security operations, right?
Why is that? Because is that a sort of a circle kind of thing? That
Well,
because it's so difficult, it's very hard to integrate?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it should be, but I think that it's always thought of as less operational, right? Threat hunting is more of an ad hoc exploratory function, where the Security Operations Center is very much a repetitive investigative type of analysis that happens over and over very much in the same way, and then it gets escalated or thrown over the fence. Threat hunting usually happens by more advanced senior analysts that have the time to go out and start just looking for bad stuff that has already happened, as opposed to SOC analysts, which are trying to trigger and respond immediately to things that are happening in real time.
Yeah, but especially with the move from prevention to more detection, even though we still do prevention, obviously, threat hunting becomes more and more important, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, and I would also say that for both threat hunting and investigation, the thing that makes it hard is the same, which is you need to know what you're looking for, first and foremost, and know how to find it in your own logs. And although that sounds easy to say out loud, when you're in the middle of an investigation, to piece together the evidence you need to compile, so not even threat hunting, but the investigation use case, you need to know a lot of details about what you're looking for, the data schemas, the query language you're using, and where to find the data. That's actually a similar problem that a threat hunter faces. So we can use pretty similar solutions to help both use cases.
But it's not weird that it's hard to find, because most of the time you don't even know what you're looking for, right? So, but that's a fundamental kind of
I mean, the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, right? These are things that are just difficult to find, assuming you even know what it is that you're looking for. What has been lacking is, and as Adriana pointed out, there are solutions out there that allow both activities to become a lot easier and a lot faster, but more importantly, to integrate together, right? For there to become this feedback loop where what analysts are looking at are things that are enriched with what threat hunters already know, and that they're also surfacing things that are unknown to them that threat hunters can key on or pivot on and start their hunts in a much more advanced kind of way.
Yeah. So how does this work then in terms of, obviously there are different types of organizations that need to do this. Not every organization does it in the same way. Is there a practical kind of approach to integrate this threat hunting into your daily SOC routine, so to speak?
Well, I mean, enter Purple, right?
Yeah.
I think, that machine learning is a type of AI that's been around for a long time, and it's very good at deciding what's good and bad. But generative AI really has given us a window into the interaction of humans with that black box that we've known as AI for a long time, right? So as a human, if you can ask it a question and it returns some type of technical data points that you can pivot on, I think is incredibly, useful. So Adriana, what do you think?
I would agree, and I would say the first problem of making sure you can integrate both into one operation is having one platform. So one thing that
and by both you mean threat hunting
and investigation and other things like triaging and more. So the foundational aspect is the platform, right? Having a single place to house your data that's fast enough. So imagine you don't have an AI to help you yet and how people would do this as a team working together. You need a platform that's fast enough at returning responses that you're not sitting there for 30 minutes waiting for the first question that you ask. In this case, the question is a very sophisticated query to return results. So that was already a necessity if you want to collaborate at all or learn from each other. Then the next layer that we added was, what if you don't need to learn the query language? That also is very difficult and it's error prone, right? So even someone who's good at scripting needs to figure it out and troubleshoot their own queries.
And it takes time to build too.
Yeah.
I was a master of index equals asterisk, right? And then, because I've been using some SIM products for 20 years now, and you have to start at the top, and it's almost like you're digging yourself a hole deeper and deeper. And next thing you know, if you find nothing, you got to start all the way back at the beginning.
That's always been one of the main objections to SIM products anyway, right?
Sure.
A lot of logs.
Yeah.
A lot of no idea what to do with it.
And where to look or how to query them, right? Yeah.
And it would be great if we can solve that problem.
Yeah. And a lot of logs, but a lot of times, as Adriana pointed out, not all the data you need, right? And a lot of the times the data is in other systems, IT systems, observability systems, CMDBs, right? With different schemas and databases, different query languages, right? So not having the data all in one place. And logs are one thing, but obviously we also generate a lot of endpoint telemetry. Mm-hmm. There's also forensic data. There's a lot of unstructured data out there that is just not generally available within a SIM. And you really just can't query for it. You got to rely on vulnerability reports and then go through them.
I think you mentioned during your keynote, the photograph, a JPEG or something.
Yeah.
Something like
so
that.
So for example, malvertising campaigns, right? A lot of times you get emails, they get blasted out to thousands of users, and they contain an image that people click on or whatever. That's not a file that's going to trigger a log. It's not going to trigger a detection. Yet it's a very good indicator of compromise, right? So how do you search for that on thousands of systems at scale and at machine speed? It's just very difficult to do.
Yeah, because you need a lot of intelligence behind it, but you also need, as you point out, Adriana, you also need a certain degree of integration. Otherwise, you will never be able to do it, right? So, but let's just dig a bit deeper into Purple AI, or AI in general, maybe, in what you're trying to achieve as SentinelOne. So, because it works in different ways, right? So you have the sort of the summarizing capabilities,
right?
But that's you also have other AI capabilities, right? Inside your platform. Could you elaborate a little bit on the different phases of Purple AI?
Yeah, and I'll mention the very first focus was deliberate, and you mentioned earlier us talking about how hard it is to do investigations. So the time it takes is hours, maybe 4 hours per investigation, and it's just difficult. You need expertise. So our first mission was solving that expertise gap using AI. So we have an architecture where one of the foundational components of it is having really expert knowledge in our knowledge service that already informs the AI about our data schemas, query language, threat intelligence, other security sources.
And what is your knowledge service, just for listeners who may not be able to understand what that means?
So the knowledge service is a component of our architecture. Mm-hmm. We have a RAG architecture, that's retrieval augmented generation. Yeah. And so one of the foundational pieces of RAG is the actual thing that you're retrieving, which is the source of truth knowledge. That is so important because that's what provides the expertise. That knowledge is created by expert threat hunters, including our own
Adriana,
teams.
one of the things, like, how does the AI know that when you say, am I being attacked, that you're not talking about someone, hijacking an airplane or holding you at gunpoint or knife point, as opposed to, a cyber attack, right? So,
Right.
I mean, I think that definitely, what you're kind of explaining is analogous to the difference between this type of architecture and just asking ChatGPT a question.
Right.
Yeah, because that's probably the association a lot of people will have, right? And I have to confess something. I'm a trained linguist. So
hence the Caballero and the Adriana.
I have some thoughts. I have some thoughts on the efficacy of ChatGPT and Gen AI in general.
Sure.
So, from a philosophical
A
standpoint,
linguistic point of view.
How did you feel about speech to text before speech to text was popular? Did you have reservations about it? I asked because I had a lot of linguist friends who thought it was impossible.
If you've used the Otter app ever, right? I'm not sure if you know that, the Otter.
I've heard of it.
You put it down and it transcribes everything that somebody says.
Right.
I've been using that for about 10 years already.
Yeah.
And that was brilliant already. But the thing is that as when you go the Gen AI route, it starts to do stuff with that
It starts arriving at conclusions that maybe.
I think there's a very fundamental difference between, and I think RAG really made a big impact on that. But especially at the beginning, it came up with all sorts of BS, which was completely untrue, obviously. And that also stems from the fact that it's very difficult very different for a machine to know a language and for a human to know a language, right? So a machine does never come up with anything new. It just gathers some stuff and it says, "Look, here I have it. That's it."
Yeah, and when it does the data cleanup, right? When it starts removing stop words and doing the basic data cleanup there, it really doesn't understand kind of the sequence of words and the meaning underlying human speech, right?
So there's a bit of a long intro, but to my question about the efficacy of Purple AI in this instance, right? So because you also use part of this, but you obviously, like I said, RAG partly solves to a certain extent because it doesn't make up stuff anymore. You have a fixed source of truth where it gets its data from, but still, it can still come up with wrong conclusions. How do you make sure that Purple AI or AI in general in your solutions doesn't do that?
Yeah, and I have to say, just to be completely clear, there's no way to prevent hallucinations with any large language model architecture that exists today. I won't say that it's never going to be possible. So for us, it's not about 100% making sure every answer is exactly the right answer. What we have is transparency. Yeah. So when you ask Purple a question, we show you the full Power Query that's returned as Purple's response to your question, and the full results that were generated by that Power Query. Power Query is our language for querying our data lake. So there's no guarantee that we use an equal sign instead of contains every time, because the system might actually, there might be ambiguity in your question where it could be interpreted one way or another. So I think it's not about being exactly accurate. It's about being so transparent and so useful that the end result is a good decision made by the analyst.
Yeah, and I think, Adriana, to that point, the results that you get from Purple are based on data that exists in the data lake.
Exactly.
Right? It's not a hallucination in that it's going to you make-up logs that didn't exist, right? Or it's not going to introduce data into your telemetry that isn't really there.
Well, it depends on what you're asking it, right? So
of course.
If you're asking, am I safe? So a generic question, you want a yes or a no. Ideally, you want a yes.
But ideally, you'll get a no.
But it depends on but if you ask it, could you give me a list of devices that haven't had this or that patch?
Sure.
I fully believe that's true. That what comes out of that one.
Right.
But if you get more into the interpretation,
right,
then it's very hard to trust is maybe a bit too big a word, but it's quite hard to really determine whether the response you're getting is
level of accuracy.
the level of accuracy is it's quite hard to determine, I think. Do you have many conversations with customers or prospects about this sort of a trust issue that with AI? Is that, I would imagine it comes up quite often. I can't be the only one having this question.
No, I think we're definitely still in the trust but verify stage with new AI techniques. And it's why it's so important for us to be transparent with the output of our system. So transparency is one of our tenets, and we follow it with every feature design because of this. But we do also we've seen customers use these tools in different ways than we had seen them use other tools. More conversationally. So what I mean is within our tool, Purple AI, you can ask a question that might be a bit ambiguous, get a result that a security analyst looks at, understands why that was the result, but it's like, that's not quite my question. What we've seen, which I think is the new remarkable thing with these tools, is they will just ask a follow-up natural language question to correct it. They will just say really quickly, no, I meant, sometimes they do say sorry and apologize to Purple. No, sorry, I meant this type of thing and not that type of thing. And the tool will provide the correct answer in the second step because there's enough context within the single investigation to be able to steer the questions and answers into what you were actually looking for.
Yeah. And this the other uses that you haven't that weren't really planned at first that's a good thing, right? I imagine.
Oh yeah.
Because or are there also other uses that you say, I'm not too wild about using it like that?
So one thing I will say, I don't know if it was surprising because I used to be a cybersecurity analyst, so I should not have been surprised by this. But we all kind of forget that security is not the only job of a security person.
Right.
There's a lot of administrative overhead, communication overhead that has to happen because when you're on the security team, sometimes you're not the person who resolves it, right? So you're not the person who's on the laptop. You're the person who's in charge of making sure the person on the laptop doesn't do the wrong thing, right? So there are so many points in the day where you have to switch from I'm actively investigating to how do I say this in a way that someone else will understand and act. All of that, these new techniques are actually very good at that. And because our tool automatically summarizes many things, including summarizes your results, summarizes the events themselves, summarizes alert details, it's actually been used by teams as a self-documenting investigation tool. So they just share it.
So it has also a huge business impact in that sense.
Absolutely.
You can. It's much easier now to show somebody who's not a security analyst.
You know, another aspect that I'll add to that, the communication is critical, absolutely. But I also, so part of my experience was running a rather sizable engineering and architecture team. And we maintained these platforms. We maintained SentinelOne, a lot of others, SIM platforms, CNAP tools, all of which require major configuration and management lifts, right? And a lot of times, we need to be debugging something and we don't know the CLI command to do something, right? Or we don't know, and it'll take us 15, 20 minutes to go log into the knowledge base of that platform vendors, to go ask the search bar, right? And to try to read a knowledge base article and say, oh, that's the switch I was looking for to debug this particular item. That's another, I think, and Adriana, you can attest to it, is one of those huge kind of, not that we didn't anticipate people would be using it, but it's just such a huge time saver for security engineers. So it's not only the SOC and the threat hunters that are leveraging this, but it's the platform engineers, it's the architects, the developers, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you run into the same things that needs to be correct if you document something.
Right.
I think that's sort of a
no, absolutely. But that to the point of being able to save these sequence of conversations and being able to share them like you would a Jupyter notebook or how you would, in Google Colab or something, and you're sharing the last 20 questions you provided, you interacted with that AI. It gives a lot of insight. it helps along with detection engineering, with detection as code, right? When you get to a point of having reusable objects to go then hunt with, and your most experienced threat hunter gives you his 2 weeks notice or her 2 week notice, and then you're left with 6 months before you can backfill. Does all of that knowledge go away with them, or do the last 20 hunts remain there for someone to take over and look at?
Sounds a lot like the issues companies encounter when a good developer leaves.
Yeah, 100%.
With all the documentation
exactly.
he didn't do.
Right.
Or hopefully he did.
Yeah.
Let's put it that
And
way.
in this case, it's basically self-documenting.
Yeah.
So it's not about someone having that good hygiene to make sure they wrote down every step. It's just the investigation steps are natural language.
Yeah.
That's a big time saver.
And again, with the whole Power Query thing, again, if I didn't have to learn regex, I would have taken a lot more vacations. I would have been able to have a lot more family time if I didn't have to learn how to query my SIM tools and my backend databases.
Yeah. So the fact that especially Gen AI is non-deterministic, so it's impossible to really retrace, at this point at least, how it came to a conclusion, is not a reason for companies to be cautious of the technology, or how would you? Because I think that's at the root of this issue. I think
I can take a first stab at this. So I do think that won't be an unsolvable problem long term. I feel like there are models emerging that are better at reasoning.
Yeah, the latest one, right?
Yeah. So. And the technology here is progressing so quickly that I wouldn't take it for granted that this is going to be a major concern long term. But let's assume that it is a major concern long term, right?
Yeah, if not, the podcast would be over.
Yeah.
Right? No.
No. So this is something I really believe, because our foundation was, how do we improve the day-to-day life of an analyst, right? The proof of being successful at that is analysts telling you their day has gotten better and easier and faster, right? And that's what we're hearing. So I go back again to, sometimes it's not about the tool itself being a perfect replacement of a junior analyst, for example. That was never our objective. Our objective was, how can we do some of the hard work in a way that's going to make you, the person doing the work, so much more efficient and more likely to make the right decision, right? Because an analyst can make mistakes as well, but now they have a tool that can be there side by side with them, helping with making these decisions.
Well, I like this answer, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was at first, when you launched Purple AI in April this year, something like that, it was launched as an analyst, as a SOC analyst. I don't really. I mean, I get why you do that in terms of marketing, but it's not. That's not the reality, is it? I mean, it would be nice if it can, especially if you're going towards the autonomous AI-driven kind of future that we all say we're going towards. I don't know which year that will be, but that's not realistic at the moment, at least, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if you want to take that.
I mean, no. So, I used to laugh at vendors when they used to tell me, well, you can replace X amount of analysts with this technology. I'd be like, no, I just have them doing more important things. Because there's so much left undone in the security space that, no matter how much time you save an analyst, there's always more things to do, especially more strategic, more valuable and intelligent, and, things that require actual human thought to get accomplished. That being said, to play a little bit of devil's advocate, I will say that do not trust your LLM entirely today, right? Trust but verify, certainly. And also, AI is not just a cybersecurity thing today, right? It is a business enabler, and it's also a situation that many businesses are implementing at a speed with which they don't understand what they're doing in a responsible and ethical way. So, as a security professional, it's our duty to make sure that the rest of the business is implementing AI in a responsible, ethical, and safe and secure way. So, don't certainly leverage AI and continue to leverage it in the cybersecurity space, for threat hunting, for troubleshooting, for engineering, for coding, 100%. But also look outside of the security organization and understand how your business is integrating AI into all the rest of the platforms out there, your SAP, your HR system, your inventory, your CMDBs. It's everywhere,
I think.
Right? Your chatbots are a liability if you don't have security countermeasures.
I think we wrote, on our platform, I think we wrote 2 or 3 stories about agents.
Sure.
This week, Salesforce is doing all sorts of agents.
Yeah.
Workday is doing all sorts of
Salesforce
agents.
AI now is like the whole name of the company.
Agent Force. It's called Agent Force now.
Oh, Agent Force.
Oh,
man.
That's a new thing.
That's crazy.
No, but especially, and that's, I think, the not necessarily the SentinelOne AI part. That's also interesting. But moving forward, the securing
AI.
Securing AI is a huge topic. And I think
100%.
It's not really in the spotlights yet enough.
Yeah, I mean, we try to. It will be. We try to preach about it. Myself and my colleagues. We have the luxury that Adriana sometimes does not have to talk outside of, the just challenges that the industry as a whole have. As thought leaders and people that just blog about, the technology challenges of tomorrow. And certainly there are so many vulnerabilities when implementing AI. And that's just implementing someone else's AI. If you're building, we are lucky to have had ML ops as part of our organization from day one, right? For over around a decade, we've been, we've understood how to implement machine learning and AI in a way that's operationally repeatable and safely deployed. Most organizations are just dipping their feet into AI as if it was a brand new kind of implementation tool. It's not a tool. It's an entire practice. It requires a process, and it's operations. If you don't have ML ops, LLM ops that are mature, repeatable, and you understand how you're doing it, it becomes a real liability.
No, I think last year was a bit of a bad year for AI in the sense that because it was the first year after ChatGPT broke.
Right.
Everybody thought, we've solved everything, and came out with lots of huge castles in the sky, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, do you see that it's getting more practical in that sense as well? So people are really getting more in tune with what AI actually is, and companies and organizations. So look, we need to do something about this, and it's not only about all the good things you can do with it, but also how do I make sure I can keep on using it?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that people are becoming more aware and more comfortable with the fact that AI is here to stay, and that they need to implement it in a way that they would implement any other type of operations within their business. They're not looking at it as some third-party gimmick, right? It's something that needs to be integral into their operations.
I think they're also feeling that they can't afford to not adopt.
To not do it, yeah.
So because your competition is going to be using these techniques.
But in general, that's a very bad way of doing things. So on a board level, say, we need to do something with AI. And then what? I don't care. Just do. That's not really the
so many comic strips on that.
Dilbert was made. But just last question before we round off, because I think we're already at the half-hour mark, which is more or less our cutoff point.
Sure.
So, you launched in April, Purple AI. What's the feedback been like, from early adopters or people that or companies that you trialed it with, and what were the most the most outstanding kind of remarks you got back?
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of positive feedback.
Oh, that's good.
Which I'm very happy about. And I mentioned earlier, our mission was help security teams, and we've been hearing from security teams it's a helpful tool. So check. Item 1, check. Specific feedback we've gotten, even at a POC stage, we had a customer tell us their investigation reduced from 4 hours to 20 minutes, which is huge. That's what we set out to do, but when you actually see it transforming people's teams, that's where we see the value.
And that's based on, was it 4,500 what's it called, incidents a day or something. So was it one of those 4,500 that they investigated?
It's one of them, right? So it's like 4.5 alerts, 67% of which can't be addressed.
Yeah.
So the ones that you do choose, so there's 3 hours just to triage alerts and decide this is the one I'm investigating. The one that you do choose to investigate will take hours if it's a significant threat.
So that means a very significant kind of
Yes.
time saver.
Yes.
It's almost like you can address them all.
Hopefully.
No, not a chance.
So, I mean, we've also done a lot of those threat ops challenges. And
those
gotten
are so
feedback.
amazing.
Those are so fun.
Yeah, I was at Black Hat not too long ago in the U.S. and the whole mortal versus machine thing was just it's so fun to see someone who's never touched a SentinelOne console go in, use Purple, and go up against our most senior Power Query expert and just kick his butt.
I'm actually going to OneCon in Vegas.
Nice. Well, you'll see the mortal versus machine.
And I've already been invited to do the mortal versus machine.
Have you?
Thing, so.
Okay. Will you be the mortal or the machine? I'm not sure.
Well, let's put it this way. I think I'm going to be the mortal.
Okay. Then you'll probably win.
My Power Query kind of knowledge is not very
okay.
huge.
Awesome.
All right. So and just I always ask this just to maybe. Do you also get some feedback that says I wish you could do this more or better or so so more to the fact, where is this going? So
yeah, I think one of the most important pieces of feedback we're getting a lot is adding Purple throughout the whole console experience. So we started as a dedicated investigation notebook interface for threat hunting, but we heard immediately from customers they wanted Purple summaries in their alerts and on their assets, and they want alert queries. So really the feedback we're getting is, yes, but give me even more functionality across the entire platform.
And how feasible is that? How what's your answer?
Well, so that I'm excited to get that feedback because it's our mission to have an integrated single unified platform. Yeah. So we're actually very well positioned to deliver AI at a platform level. So for me, it's one of those challenges that I'm happy to hear because I know we can achieve it and we can do it well.
Okay. Well, I will keep that promise in mind. Hopefully, all your customers and other people will agree with this in a couple of years' time that you've delivered on this as well. All right. So, Paul, thank you for joining me. It was a very interesting conversation, I think. I hope our audience also found that interesting. Otherwise,
otherwise we won't have another one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of TechZine Talks on Tour. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. If you'd like more information, please feel free to visit techzine.eu, where we cover everything, everywhere. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll join us again on the next episode of TechZine Talks on Tour.